Black cisgender heterosexual identified men are killing Black trans women. Black ones.
We are not talking about it in the church.
Those street guys are already engineers. If they're mixing drugs and stuff together, they're chemical engineers.
If you're just like, yeah, let's kill 50 cops just because, you know, that's only a fraction of the Black people they killed. Wait, now you're talking about my wife.
For those of you who are joining in, we are talking about just the housing in the Black community and owning property, why it's important, and how to get yourself in there.
When I think of financial literacy, I just don't think of the classroom work. I think some of it is practical application.
I'm scared, especially, you know, calling them to arms, talking about poll workers or poll watchers. That is rooted in history of voter suppression and intimidation.
Joe Biden needs to make that a part of his educational platform.
Call that shit out.
I don't see much value in you speaking in tongues, and yet when you speak in English, you don't say nothing for my people.
Many of the reasons why we're dying is because of the conditions we live under that cause our health to be so bad, and that cause it's the food, the water, it's that shit up first.
Where their fathers have prostate cancer, I had like 150% chance of getting cancer, being diagnosed with cancer. I had a father vegan diet, 20 years remission, had thyroid surgery. I'm like, that's what I'm doing.
Am I there? I think I'm here. Can you guys see me? You guys can see me. And you guys are still there. Oh, I was ready to start doing a whole bunch of text messaging. I tell you, technology sometimes. That's my little wannabe lucky clover, whatever you call it. Okay, so let's just make sure everybody's still in. Yes, they are. Okay, let's start. Hello, everyone. Hello, everybody. All right, this week in Black People Shit, Black Mothers Matter, Pregnancy, Healthcare, and Home Births. I'm your host, Christy Ferris, and I think we're back up and ready to go. In a recent article done by the Center for Disease Control, it stated that Black women are 2 to 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes than white women, even though most pregnancy-related deaths are preventable. To put it in another way, a Black woman is 22% more likely to die from heart disease than a white woman, 71% more likely to perish from cervical cancer, but 243% more likely to die from pregnancy or childbirth-related causes. Here with me today to discuss this ongoing crisis is Dr. Raegan McDonald-Mosley and Ashley Nicole. Raegan is a board-certified obstetrician, and Ashley Nicole is an author and proud mother of 3 who were all birthed at home. All of her kids were birthed at home. And as always, I have with me on this St. Patrick's Day, the luckiest of charms, actress Janora McDuffie, and the man who continues to steal the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, Abdul Majid. Hey, everybody.
What up?
Hey, oh man. Hey.
Oh man, I was like, what is going on with this stuff that's happening? But
Hey, but we still got folks riding with us. Look at that, Vanice. Thank you so much for understanding and popping in. And Kathy, we see you today. Welcome. And thank you everybody for your patience.
yes,
I
so
think I might have brought my bad day mojo to the show because everything was fine, and then I popped on and it was just because I've been having a day. So
No. Listen, we're just glad you're here and everybody else is here. So before we bring everybody else on, even though we are already 7 minutes into this whole entire show, we haven't gotten to any of our hot topics. Let's talk about the award show. The first thing that we had was the Grammys. I mean, it was just nice to be able to see her, Beyonce, getting the most Grammys out of every single person. I think she has like 28 Grammys, so the most out of male and female, if I believe I'm correct.
yeah, she has the most, yeah. Yep.
Yes, and then she won 3, I think. Oh no, that was my brain. Her one. Meg Thee Stallion. What'd you say?
Yeah, best new song I think she won for. But
yes, her, and then of course Meg Thee Stallion. She won 3. That's what I'm thinking. I'm seeing in my visual here. And then of course Tiffany Haddish, who won for best comedy album. And the last time somebody's ever won was back in the 80s with Whoopi Goldberg. So what were your thoughts on all that?
Well, we can't forget about Nas. Let's not skip over Nas.
My bad.
One of the greatest MCs to ever touch a microphone, was nominated 13 times and finally won one. So
Wow. I didn't realize this was his first. Because
His first
Nas
ever.
been off the scene for a minute, or at least off the mainstream scene.
Right.
But I'm sure you've been bumping him and listening to him there on the East Coast.
He just put out a new album out. That's why he won for best rap album.
Yeah, I'm saying, like, I wasn't up on it. I know Nas from back in the day, and yep, you're right, dope lyricist. So good for him.
Yeah, I didn't even realize he had a new one out. So I was like, wow.
And in terms of
go ahead, Chidori.
I was just gonna say, and in terms of rap music, the pair Megan Thee Stallion and Beyonce were the first female duo to win for rap song. That was dope. And usually I have to watch the Emmys on DVR. I got to fast through like half the stuff I don't even know, half the people I don't even know, but I actually really enjoyed it this time around. I'm a big Trevor Noah fan. I thought he did great. I didn't know how it was going to look being all in this pandemic COVID space, but I thought they did a really good job. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, but that little stripper pole little situation that happened, I just thought that that she did a little bit too much. What's her name? Oh Lord.
Who, Megan Thee Stallion or
no. Well, she came
Cardi
out
B?
during the song. Cardi B. Thank you, Cardi B. That's
can't
a little much. I was doing this. I was like,
stripper for acting like a stripper.
I know, but it is now. It's CBS. I was like,
Strippers gonna strip.
On script.
What was your thoughts on it, Abdul?
I thought it was interesting. I believe all this stuff is put together and we have nothing to do with it. The award was just given to certain individuals to try to fit a theme, and it's political, and there's record labels involved. I was just happy for Nas. I love the Bruno Mars, Anderson .Paak performance. Yeah, I thought it was overall, I'm always cheering Black people, so go Black people.
Yeah, it was great to see. Okay, so what about with the Oscars? I mean, we had a lot of great nominations. Daniel, Lakeith,
Chadwick,
Viola, all these great people that were nominated that gave some kick behind performances. I can't lie. I mean, they were all good. The only thing I didn't like, though, was Leslie, Lakeith, and Daniel all being nominated for supporting actor, especially when 2 of them, to me, were leads. Yeah. So that was a little disappointing. So now we got 3 of them competing against each other. What are your thoughts about that? I'll start with you, Abdul.
I don't know. Is it to split the vote like they do, like the Republicans do, like the Democrats do, to mess up the election and split the vote? I don't know, but I do think all of them deserved it. I would give Lakeith the leading I thought he was the lead in that movie, but I don't know. But how does that work? How do you have 2 supporting and no leading? Like, who are you supporting if there's no lead?
Yeah, so there's 2 things that I'm still trying to understand it a little bit. I was listening on how they do the whole voting thing, but I won't be able to explain it. But there were 2 things that always come up. I remember when Viola Davis won for Best Actress for the Tony. She won Best Actress, I think, for the Golden Globe Awards or the Emmys or something. And then and all of this was for Fences. And then when it got to the Oscars, she was Best Supporting. And I was very pissed off about that, because I was like, how is she going to win Best Actor for these other, in these other categories for, different awards, but get the supporting, which she ended up winning.
Here's a question though.
Yeah.
Quick question for you and Janora. Do you think that they gave Lakeith and Daniel supporting so that Chadwick Boseman can get a clean sweep for lead actor? Because he is nominated as a lead actor for Ma Rainey. So you think that was the politics of it? Like they wanted to make sure he had a clean sweep?
Well, there could be a possibility of that. Now, here's the thing that I'm trying to understand, that I still need to do some research on, and maybe Janora, a little bit more, but I was watching, what's his name? Oh my goodness gracious. Lawrence Fishburne was talking about when he did What's Love Got to Do with It, and his team wanted him to run for Best Supporting Actor and not Best Actor. And he was like, absolutely not. I did not do a supporting role. I'm going for Best Actor. And of course he didn't win, but they were saying he would be a clean sweep for the Best Supporting. My question is it the team that, submits them for this, or, like the production, or is it based off of the votes from the Oscar, people who are on the committee? And that's what I was trying to get a little bit more information about. So do you know?
I think it's 5 white people in the room.
No, Abdul, stop. Like. And no, because I think that is the perfect question, Christy. Before we jump to any kind of conspiracy theory, we need to figure out how each category is decided. Does the film itself put up its people per category? Because if that's the case, then we can't truly complain, although there is a complaint, or at least confusion around, how are you going to have 2 supporting lead actors and then there's no lead actor? That is a little weird. But also it does become offensive when it's just like, okay, Chadwick, clean sweep, split the vote. That means you're suggesting that only Black people are going to vote for Black people, versus just the true power of the performance itself. So I don't know. I do think I'm super excited about the Oscars. Shout out to Viola Davis. She's now, with this year, and Ma Rainey has become the most nominated Black female actress for the Oscars. I think that's awesome. She just surpassed, she was tied with Octavia Spencer. So I think that's great. And she was also tied with Ruth Carter as a costume designer who
designer.
we honored last week. So I think we're nominated. We're seen in several different categories. Is it perfect? Does it erase the past? No, but progress is being made. So I'm gonna support that and celebrate that. And also,
Bump that. I want folks to be nominated for Best Actor. Bump all this supporting actor all the time when we deserve to be nominated for Best Actor.
But let's find out who put that up. Like, let's find out the source so we can learn to fix it from the right place. And then shout out to the folks who have come, always loving some Tangerine. She is here. She says, "What's up, BP fam?" And then I think also, wait, she always has the answers. She is coming in. The production company submits, but there are guidelines to fit in certain categories. But people choose certain categories if they qualify for more than one based on various reasons. Thank you for clearing that up, Tangerine, and thank you for being here. Yes,
Janora, everything is decided by 5 white people in the room. The Oscars, nuclear holocaust, like everything across the board, 5 white people in the room.
I think it's time to move to the next subject so we can bring in our main topic. I'm not even addressing that.
Yeah, so, and the only thing I want to add to that, Tangerine, is I thought the same thing, because when I heard that whole situation with Lawrence Fishburne, but I was watching the news when they were talking about it, and it sounded like that the committee had something to do with it. So that's why I wanted to do a little bit more research about it. But go ahead. What were you going to say, Janora?
Nothing. That I just was not going to address Abdul and his 5 white men in a room.
Tangerine
might think that's funny, but
thank you, Tangerine.
I am not succumbing to these shenanigans today. We got new folks in the room. Hey, BPS, what's up? Tori Overton, Little John, and then let's see. Tim says only actors who are voting members get to decide who is placed in each category. Okay, thank you for that bit of information too, Tim.
Okay, so with all that being said, there's also some apologies. We'll try to get through this one, but okay, Tim said something. What else did he say?
Same for directors, nominees, and so on.
Gotcha. Okay, so we also had some apologies that kind of came up. Sharon Osbourne apologized for her blow up on her talk show, The Talk, which is a whole nother crazy shenanigans stuff. Kirk Franklin apologized after a leaked audio of his cursing out his child surfaced. Stacey Dash apologized for being, well, you know, Stacey Dash for the last 4 years. And an announcer at a high school girls basketball game apologized for using the N-word at the game. So if you're not familiar with a lot of this stuff, we'll try to do a little bit of a brief overview. I'm sure you guys have probably heard about the Sharon Osbourne thing where she was on The Talk doing her little spiel and said that she wasn't racist for supporting her friend from Britain, all that, you know, great stuff. So did you guys have any opinions on that? Or anything you want to add to that?
I don't think the only thing I have to add to that, I understand the Sharon Osbourne one. I don't know what she's apologizing for though, because I heard her apologies on the interview she did with the black gentleman, like Frazier. I forgot what his name is.
Kevin Frazier. Which he took that post down that he had up there tagging all the black people. But I don't
understand why people got mad at the interviewer for interviewing somebody, because you know
they said that he let her off easy. That they
softballed her. But I mean, Oprah's been doing that for years, and no one's jumping down her throat. I don't think Kirk Franklin should have apologized. That was a family matter that got leaked, and his son deserved to be cussed out for what he was trying to do. He tried to threaten his father, wanted to fight him. Didn't let all the audio go through, or let the people hear the whole audio where Kirk Franklin said that he was going to call a counselor to try to help them out, blah, blah, blah. So, and Stacey Dash, man, she's still pretty. That's all I got.
Okay, but what about the basketball? What about the whole basketball, the N-word and all that?
Well, that guy should be fired. That guy should be fired.
So why don't you explain? Because that was something that you.
There was an announcer. And during the Star Spangled Banner, of all things, he thought his mic was off. And while talking to his co-host, he dropped the N-word twice in pertaining to the black female athletes on the court. So then he responded and said that it was a mistake because he had low blood sugar. I didn't know low blood sugar. Yeah. He said low blood sugar. I didn't know that's what low blood sugar did, but hey, they get away with all sorts of things.
Well, you know, I've had some moments with my little blood, you know, when my sugar gets low. So
well, you dropping the N-word the whole time?
No, I'm not calling people out their names. Go ahead, Janora.
Yeah, I just wanted to read what he exactly said, what the conversation was. He said, they're kneeling, fuck them, and talking about these high school young girls. I hope Norman gets their ass kicked. That's the name of their team. I hope they lose. He said some other things. And then he said, hell no, fucking niggas. So in his quote unquote apology, he said, I become disoriented and say things that aren't appropriate as well as hurtful. So not in there did he say, I don't believe this, I don't feel this way, even though we all know that would have been some bullshit. But he says it causes him to say some hurtful and inappropriate things. I think this just reveals people's true nature. And what was most disappointing or hurtful to me was that he also said in his long apology that he also used to be a youth pastor. Yeah. These people who feel this way at the core, I feel like it's this whole blood sugar thing is just like alcohol. We have too much and then our true feelings come out unfiltered. Yeah. These are the same people that are our teachers or that are our doctors and that are in the system that teach our young kids. And if that at the core is how they feel, it's a scary world. So just really trying to figure out, how do you combat that? How do we come together? And I don't know the answer to that. And this again was revealing to what a large amount of people think and feel.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be something if slavery was started by low blood sugar? Like,
I'm done with
all
you.
of the horror that we went through is because people didn't get cookies.
Yeah, and you're right. We should always assume that our mics are hot and that they're you know, that people can hear what you're saying. Okay, so with all that being said, let's move on to our wonderful guest that we have. Raegan McDonald-Mosley is a board-certified obstetrician-gynecologist with a background in women's reproductive health, public health, and international health. She uses her voice as a physician advocate to elevate important issues of our times, such as tackling healthcare disparities and the role of racism in differential health outcomes. She is currently on the board of Dr. Shalon's Maternal Action Project, an organization dedicated to removing barriers, biases, and disparate practices that impede access to. Okay, I know you got this. Equitable quality care for Black women and women of color. And we just want to make sure that we welcome her back because this is her second time being on the show. And Ashley Nicole is in the entertainment with over 10 years of experience producing and freelancing for production and entertainment event companies nationally and internationally. In addition to her career, Ashley is the proud mother of 3 beautiful children, all of which were birthed at home. She currently is sharing this journey with her upcoming novel, as well as her mission to educate and stand for Black women and their maternal health. So I want to welcome these 2 wonderful ladies to the show. Hi.
Hey.
Hey, it's so great to have you guys. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to chat with you guys.
Yeah, so we wanted to do the show because there are so many women that are out there, including myself, who would love to have a child. And yet we see all of these, just this information about women dying, Black women dying, from childbirth. We're seeing so many things. Now I feel like it's coming out, especially after tennis player. Where's my brain?
Serena Williams.
When that whole thing with Serena Williams, because you think, well, this woman has money, she has this, and yet No one paid attention to what was going on. Oh, you're fine. You're fine. And yet she wasn't. And she could have died. So we wanted to make sure that we had a conversation about that. So let's start with you, Dr. Raegan. Just tell us just a little bit of why we see so many Black women dying during childbirth when it could be prevented.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me back and for highlighting this really, really important topic. First of all, I just want to say that although, one maternal death is too many, this is still a very rare occurrence. And so I don't want anyone to say like, I'm never going to get pregnant because of this issue. That being said, it is completely unconscionable that in a country like ours, with so many resources, that women in general are dying from childbirth, that this is increasing now, right, in this era that we're in, and that Black women, as you stated in your introduction, are 2 to 3 times more likely to die than their white counterparts. And that's even after adjusting for other factors, right, like education and income. And again, one death is too many. And when you sort of extend the problem and think about, okay, so those that survive death, right, there's still so many more that have suffered significant consequences from childbirth. And that's something that we're not even talking about as much as like people who walk away, but they have severe morbidity. And I think some of the things that you talked about in your introduction are at play here, right? Like Janora spoke about our teachers and our doctors and people in our community who implicitly have racism and these biases in their minds. And it's of no surprise, right, that also manifests in our healthcare system. Interpersonal racism, institutional racism, and systemic racism all play a huge role in this. In addition, we just have a broken healthcare system writ large, right, that sort of pays people to do things, but not necessarily for quality outcomes. So those are the things that are at play here when we talk about why Black women are dying. You mentioned Serena Williams' story. Well, there's actually a study called the Giving Voice to Mothers study that looked at inequity and mistreatment during pregnancy, and it found that Black women were much more likely to experience, especially low-income Black women, higher rates of mistreatment by the healthcare system. So this is quantifiable, right? People aren't being listened to. They're not being given the highest quality of care. Black women are more likely to live in areas that have obstetric deserts where they don't have hospitals with high quality care. Where they live, and they're more likely to have Medicaid and to be treated in teaching institutions. So these are all playing a role. In addition to the healthcare system in most states that pay like a capitated rate, a global rate, meaning that for your prenatal care, your delivery, your postpartum care, that's all in one bundle, which means what? That the providers are disincentivized to do things, to give high quality care in some circumstances. And so there needs to be a huge shift to paying for quality and measuring quality metrics. And there are some states like North Carolina and Ohio and others that are sort of moving for at least Medicaid payments to be done based on quality and not on a bundled rate. So these are some.
Hold on. Let me just ask this one question. And then Ashley will get to you. Abdul will get to you. So Dr. Raegan, you mentioned something where you were saying that they're not getting the quality. Can you give examples of what specifically they are not receiving? You know what I mean? So that way people have an idea like, oh, I didn't realize I should have been getting this, or I should have been blah, 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 or I should be getting this, and it's not happening now. But I think a lot of us just think, oh, we go in to do the ultrasound and hey, you're letting me know that my baby's healthy or not. What other things should we be looking for?
Right. No, that's a great question. I mean, there are sort of standards of care, right? And this, we can easily look these up. There's the American Congress of Obstetrics and Gynecology that sort of has basic prenatal care standards of what should be done at different phases during a pregnancy. But the reality is that every person is different, right? And if the institution is incentivized to do the least, but someone needs more, they need more care, they need specialized care, the system's not set up to sort of incentivize that care. That's the problem. And so how this manifests is that people can show up to the emergency room and say, I have this issue, I'm having pain, and be turned away, right? Because the system is incentivized to sort of say, are you dying, or do you need to be admitted? No, go home and call your doctor tomorrow. And then what happens is that person goes home and then has a catastrophic event. And this is something that's, inherently very personal to me, because it's not only my professional passion, but I lost a very dear friend, Dr. Shalon Irving, to a maternal death 4 years ago. She was a brilliant, intelligent, PhD level Black woman who died after going to her provider over and over and over again and saying, I don't feel right. She was ignored, sent home, and within hours died.
Yeah.
NPR did a whole article about her.
That's right.
Yeah. Abdul, I know you have a question and we'll get to
No,
it.
you asked a question I was about to ask.
Oh, yeah. And there is truth. I have a friend of mine, it had nothing to do with, birthing a kid, but she said, something's not right. She went to the hospital. They, sent her home and she had a staph infection where the skin where it ate up all of her organs. In a matter of a couple of hours, she was gone. I mean, just completely ate up everything. And, they sent her home twice. So Ashley Nicole, your situation is, from what I'm understanding, is that you want to start something where women, especially Black women, but women, I'm assuming, about birthing kids at home. Is that kind of the direction that we're moving in?
Well, I first of all, hi. I would definitely want to hi. Dr. Raegan, what Dr. Raegan said was so imperative. I think my mission is just to make Black women aware of their options. I think so often we are told that we have to do it one way, and we don't necessarily have to do it that way. So my goal and my mission, I would say, is just to educate women, especially Black women, about the potential of birthing at home. And with Dr. Raegan talking about the systemic racism, we can provide an environment that you're comfortable in with midwives and doulas who are of color, and provide that supportive environment that will help you birth your baby. I think what I've realized oftentimes is that we deal with racism on so many different levels, right? Biased and unbiased. And I think that sometimes holding a child, you don't realize how that is impacting you and impacting your birth and impacting your pregnancy. And so if I have a care provider that represents me, right, that looks like me, I'm not worrying about if racism is an issue, right? I can really focus on my child and birthing my child and like carrying my baby. And so my goal is really just to tell women that they can do it, that it's not a superhero type of ideology. It's really trusting your body. And especially with the biases that Dr. Raegan was speaking about, it was imperative for me to have another option, because I know that, Black women in this country have a way of dealing with pain, and we deal with it stoically, right? We deal with it stoically, and then we express it stoically. Right? We're not passing out on the ground. I mean, some of us are animated, but the majority of us really kind of reserve our pain. And so that reflects in the medical, I think in the medical area as like, oh, she's fine. She can handle it. And I just didn't want to have that type of pressure over my pregnancy.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And we'll definitely get into your book as well. I would love to talk about that. Janora, did you want to throw in something? Oh, wait, you're on mute.
Yeah, muted.
I am. My apologies. I was doing so much and picking up everything that you ladies are dropping down. I guess my question, I just want to dig a little bit further before we get to the end, which is where I always want to go, which is the solution. Like how can we be part of the solution of something moving forward instead of just staying with the issue and problem itself, which is multi-layered and multi-generational. Ashley, Nicole, was there something specific that happened for you to have made this decision to explore other options? Do you have a personal story?
Well, here's my personal story: is that I exist in America as a Black woman, right? So we have that. That's right. Enough. I mean, right. And I found myself, and I write about this, I found myself going to doctors and having to like manipulate my experience in order to not be stereotyped. And what Dr. Raegan was talking about is interesting, that, that this problem outclasses us, right? It doesn't matter if you're educated. It doesn't matter if you're rich. It is still a problem with Black women surviving birthing. And so when I had my first child, because I come from a lineage of nurses, right? A lineage, my mom had a C-section. So this wasn't a traditional thing that I was doing, right? So by coming from a lineage of medical doctors and nurses, they were just against it. So I decided to have an OBGYN at the beginning of my pregnancy to like make everyone comfortable, which when I look back on was great, but I should have made myself more comfortable. And going into that with my first child, I just felt like I didn't want a white man telling me about my body. I didn't want to feel what I felt when I would go and I would have a backache and they would say, oh, take some Tylenol, and knowing I have scoliosis, right? I didn't want to feel that pressure. And more importantly, I cared about my baby so much that I superseded myself. And now I'm protecting this child, right? And so I wanted to provide an environment where it was free of any type of racial judgment. And so that's why I went to the home birth route.
That's
so,
good. Go ahead.
I got two questions, one for each person. Ashley, Nicole, when you went through the birth, did you get an epidural? And if so, why? And if not, why not? And Dr. Raegan, is over-medication of Black women or over-medication of women in pregnancies a factor to some of these deaths with regards to Black people? Because we tend to get over-medicated and everything else. Is that part of this as well?
Ooh, that's a great question. And I'm so glad you asked. So at home with midwives, you aren't providing epidural, right? You aren't providing any type of medication to help you deal with the pain, right? Your body is capable of pushing out a baby. Your body is able to, if you allow, right? I mean, this is not like some myth, right? Our ancestors were doing it hundreds of years ago, right? We just got introduced to this idea of C-sections. We're just introduced to medical advances that can actually help some women, right? And so I think that when we talk about birth and we talk about pain, when you go to route of a midwife, you're not providing an epidural. But what you're provided is a team that understands your birth plan, that understands your wants. So when you say, hey, I'm having a little bit of pain, they remind you of your strength. They remind you that, no, that's not what you wanted right now. We're going to ride this contraction. They're there to execute your plan, not necessarily exercise their plans of vacationing because they wanted to provide a C-section for someone. Like, I know I've built a team around me and an environment around me to support my decisions to have my children at home.
So, and I'll let you answer that, Dr. Raegan, but there's a movie that just came out. Man, it just got nominated too, and I can't remember the name of it, but she loses her baby. She has her baby at home and she loses the baby. Praise God, that wasn't your situation where you had.
It almost was.
Okay.
It almost was.
So how do you deal with those situations with somebody who's helping you birth the baby who's not necessarily a doctor?
Right. And I think the myth is that midwives don't have to have any accreditation. And that's not true. Right. Some midwives have more accreditation and have had more schooling than your doctors. Let's just start there. Right. And so when you think of a midwife, you assume that they're not as educated, but some of them are even more educated and more familiar with your body and the way your body works. Right. And so my second child, oddly enough, he was born not breathing. And he had the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck 8 times, 7.5 times, I think 7. And so every time I would push in the tub, he would come back up. Every time I would push, he would come back up, right? And finally, we were able to get him out. And the midwife unwrapped his cord and set him on my chest. And he was black and blue. His eyes were bloodshot red. He wasn't breathing at all. And then that's when my midwife told me to talk to the baby, right? Because that's a way to engage and remind the child this is all the child has heard in the womb, etc. And so by that time that happened, I called my mom, who was at my birth, which is also a benefit of having it at home. And I called my mom and I was like, Mom, we need to pray. And there ain't nothing like a praying grandmother, and she came in. The next thing you know, my son was breathing and alive. And now because I believe that in your birth, right, for women who are watching, that these little ones tell you who they want to be. And so we had not named my son, but now his name means breath of God. And so we've named him according to his birth. And he has great diction. He's such an orator. So So yeah, I've had that scare, but know that midwives prepare a plan for you, an exit strategy if something will happen. And they're trained to know, oh, high blood pressure, I'm hearing a heartbeat. They're trained to know when to escort you to the hospital. They won't let you, their goal is not to have your wants of this idea of home birth supersede your life and the baby's.
Got it. And Dr. Raegan, there's a couple of things that you can touch on. One, the first question that Abdul, and then just your thoughts on doulas and having a child, at home and so forth.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And actually, Nicole, thank you for sharing your experience. And I think what you initially said is so critically important, right? It's just like, we need to be aware of our options. I don't think it's helpful to have this dichotomy that's like, midwives good, doctors bad, hospitals good, home birth bad, because it really depends on who you are and what your wishes are, right? Like, I envision a world where someone can feel supported and healthy and have a safe birth, whether that's at home or in the hospital or an accredited home birth. But people, A, need to know that those are options, and B, that there are safe ways to do that and feel supported in them. I think the problem with our country right now is that we have marginalized home birth. And so oftentimes people don't want to talk about their experiences. Again, Ashley, Nicole, thank you for talking about yours. People are hiding in the corners. And so we don't have good research about this, right? We do know that on average, there are only about 35,000 home births in the United States a year, or less than 1%. And about a quarter of those weren't planned to be at home. They just, happened too quickly for people to get to the hospital or whatever. And that a larger number occur in accredited birth centers or other types of birth centers. And it's a very safe option for people for whom that are healthy. They've had these conversations with their providers. They have a birth plan. They have a transport plan if something goes wrong and they need to go to the hospital. And so people need to know that there are these options. But the problem is right now, to Abdul's point, is that birth is over medicalized in our society, right? Home births in birthing centers are much more common in other countries. For the average person now, if they go to their provider, I'm pregnant, the assumption is going to be that you're going to have your birth in a hospital. You're going to come in, you're going to be strapped down to a monitor. You're probably going to get an epidural, and this is what's going to happen. And the problem is, the more things we do to people, the more likely you are to end up with a C-section and other complications. And we don't have a lot of support in hospital systems unless you're really deliberate about finding one that are staffed by midwives and places where they have doulas to help you if you don't want to have a more traditional birth, right? Which is a very hard thing to do on your own unless you're planning for it. And so we're left with a situation like during this pandemic where people have been absolutely afraid to go to the hospital, because especially in the early days of the pandemic, in places like New York and in California, where the virus was raging our societies and people were afraid to go into the hospitals to have babies. And yet we didn't have any infrastructure in our country to support births outside of the hospital. So we need to do better, make sure that people are informed of their options, and make sure that we're increasing communication between midwives, doulas, providers in the hospital system, and providing that continuum of care.
Nice.
Are home births covered on insurance plans?
That's a great question as well. And I think it depends on what plan you have, right? I can only speak from my personal experience that I was able to have my birth covered. But there are some barriers, right? Because I had to pay up front and then I had to be reimbursed. And here's the interesting thing is that home birth was actually cheaper for me to do, right? Than a birth at a hospital. It would have ran me double what I paid. What I paid at the hospital. But the hard part is, how does one come up with a couple $1,000s up front, right? And so there lies the rub, and there lies the discrimination and the realities of trying to have your baby at home. So some insurances will refund you and reimburse you, but again, you have to pay out of pocket first.
And how difficult?
Varies. Sorry, Janora, I was just going to add that it very much varies state by state, insurance plan by insurance plan. And this is another area where we should be centering people and asking them, what do you want your birth experience to be? Not what does your plan cover?
There you go, Dr. Raegan. Yeah. There you go.
Ahead,
I ask my question, I did just want to shout out the folks who have joined us. Suzanne, welcome. She's been chiming in, and just invite anybody else watching. If you got a question or a comment, don't hesitate to drop it in, because we definitely have some amazing women who know a whole lot willing to be here and answer and share. And the question I had in that case, well, let's stay with the home birth, and it sounds like you got the dream #1 team, Ashley, Nicole, surrounding you for the births of your beautiful children. Was it difficult to find that? What resources are available, especially if we want people or the people surrounding us to look like us?
Right. That is a great question. I have to say, first, kudos to my husband, right? I have a great partner who understood my plan and actually in some instances pushed my plan. He was adamant about having his babies, you know, having a bonding moment with his baby and not having the babies just taken from you and, you know, touched. So shout out to him. I think having a good partner in this is a good start, whether that's a romantic partner or a friend or an associate. That's the best place to start. Also, people like me, like you can call on, or you can begin to build a birth community. I had a friend of mine, Nicole Sessions, who had her baby in a birth center. But when I went to that birth center, it was all white midwives. And I saw one woman there, and she had locks, and her name is Kimberly Durden. And I looked Kimberly in her eye and I said, am I going to be okay here? And she looked me back, only a way like a sister can, right? Like, is it good? And it's like, that question is so loaded, right? We know when we're asking and what the implications are when we ask those questions. And she just shook her head. She's like, I'm gonna make sure you're good. And at that point, I knew that this was the care that I was going to get. At that point, she was not a midwife. She was a doula, and she was a midwife in training. And so she was my tether. Although my midwife was actually a white woman, she was my tether to the reality. She was my, like, this is what's going on. She allowed me to like talk, and she answered all of my questions. And again, I think what's different in the hospital is that, you know, you have 15 minutes to get everything out. With a midwife, our appointments were 45 minutes, which allowed me to really kind of hear the baby, to be in flow. So I think connecting with resources on Facebook, you know, mothers who have home birth, and like really kind of Green Book style, telling people, oh, this is a lady who I've used, go to her. She may know someone in your area.
So I was just going to say, Dr. Raegan, I know one of your backgrounds is that you worked at Planned Parenthood. That was one of the places that you worked. My question for you is, when you decided to work at Planned Parenthood, did you know the history behind Planned Parenthood? And I know the whole story was that the person who created, you know, Planned Parenthood, they were trying to but get rid of Black babies coming into this world. Did you know that? And how have things changed since then? You know, since the early 1900s.
Yeah. So Planned Parenthood was founded 200 years ago. And the founder, Margaret Sanger, was really a pioneer at that time in terms of increasing access to information about contraception. But you have to understand that contraception at that time was literally like the rhythm method, right? Like avoid sex half the month, and then you can only have sex during this short period of time. And she went to prison for just sort of counseling young women in Brooklyn who wanted to like not have their 7th child, about just doing that and handing out pamphlets on that. Unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation about the history of Margaret Sanger and the history of and the history of Planned Parenthood. But the reality is, like 200 years ago, all of our institutions were racist. And so I sort of assumed that a lot of that misinformation was true. What I have found in my own reading and my own study was that Margaret Sanger was not so much overtly racist as she was ableist, and felt like, you know, contraception and limiting the fertility of people with disabilities or people who were deemed, you know, not worthy of reproduction, which is, you know, equally bad and not excusable. But the reality is that what I found in Planned Parenthood was a place that provided care for people regardless of their background, regardless of where they were born, their insurance status and income status, which was not the reality that I found in a lot of other healthcare settings, which was very welcoming and allowed me to provide care to people high quality, no matter where they came from.
Mm.
Can I say a few things sort of about this? So, so regarding solutions, right? There's a lot that we can do around this, because I don't want to get fixated only on the problem, because we know that there are solutions, and a lot of the solutions are being led by Black women and by Black communities that we need to invest in. So number one is like, we need to value Black lives and value Black women. And that's something that needs to be a huge cultural change writ large in society across the board in all respects, period. We talked about the payment models. That needs to change. It shouldn't be a fee-for-service model where I get paid for your delivery. And so therefore, whether I don't see you postpartum or don't provide you with high quality depression screening, et cetera, I'm still gonna get paid the same amount. We should be paid for outcomes, for keeping people healthy and keeping their babies healthy. Right? We should be paying for community models of care that we know that work. We know that there are places like Mama Toto Village here where I live in the DC area that provide accessible perinatal support services. I'm talking people in the community, perinatal community health workers, family support workers that can come to your house, do home visits, make sure you have what you need. Those models work, and they need to be fully funded. We need to diversify the workforce, right? When actually Nicole went to her birthing center and she found a Black woman and she gravitated to her for that, like that should be everyone's experience, to find and see themselves in their own providers, whether that's a doula, a midwife, a doctor, a surgeon, or whatever. And then unfortunately, when things do go wrong, because not everyone is going to be able to give birth in a birth center at home, if things do go wrong in a hospital setting and you don't feel heard, people need to know the language to use. And we have that, right? Like, you remember going to the store with your mom when you were younger and she wasn't getting what she wanted? What did she say? Can I talk
to the manager?
Right.
Yeah.
In the healthcare setting, that looks a little different. It's, I don't feel safe. I want to talk to the head of the patient safety or quality care initiative, right? I want to talk to the nurse in charge. I don't feel like I'm being heard. But those are red flags. And I promise you, if you use that language, you will get somebody's attention, right? And there are some trainings I want to shout out. The Black Coalition for Safe Motherhood. They have a beautiful training. I participated in one of the initial models. It's really amazing. They talk about asking questions, claiming your space, trust your body, tell your story, the ACTS training. These are some resources that people can use, right? And we need to increase access to mental health services, because the reality is that mental health issues are ubiquitous in our society, but particularly among communities of color. It's not something we talk enough about, and it's very prevalent, especially in the postpartum period. So these are some of the solutions. There's a huge bill that's being sponsored right now, the Omnibus bill. You may have heard of it. One of my dear friends, Congresswoman Lauren Underwood from Illinois, is one of the sponsors. It's 12 bills in one that would support maternal health. So we need to advocate for this and make sure that you're voting, because at the end of the day, a lot of the systems and structure and the policies that are going to impact access to quality healthcare lie in the hands of your legislators.
Could you, what's the bill called again, just so that we can put it up on the screen?
The Omnibus bill.
Okay. Did you get that, Marquita? Post that on there. No, that's all good stuff. And I just want to also just say to Tangerine, ask that question specifically because so many people have negative things to say about Planned Parenthood. But I do believe that there are some great things that come out of it. And I think people need to know that amazing people like Dr. Raegan has worked there. So Janora, Abdul, did you have anything that you wanted to?
Yeah, I just have one question, because I read this maybe a couple years ago, maybe 10 or more years ago. Being the only man on the show, I read a couple years ago that a large portion of Black women are having babies without the father being present, and that is affecting the care that the mother is getting. Is that true? Or is that just hogwash and it's nothing? Or is that a real thing?
I don't know that is true, but what I will say in all contexts, anytime someone was like going to the hospital, or especially if they're being admitted to the hospital, having someone there as your advocate is critically important, right? It's like a whole different world in there. They use different language. There are all these bells and whistles, people coming around at like crazy hours where no one's there. And sometimes it's hard when you're in pain or you're uncomfortable or you're fixated on just getting well. It's hard for you to have the mental space to ask the tough questions, right? And that's why like having a doula there who's like their whole point, right? That's sort of like a non-licensed person whose whole existence is there to help you through your birthing experience and your postpartum experience, right? Having that advocate there for you during the birthing experience is critically important, but that's also relevant in other circumstances. If you're going into the hospital to have a cancer surgery or have your appendix removed, you know, if you can have an advocate there, whether that's a family member or a friend or someone who can just ask the tough questions and making sure that they're advocating you, whether that's you need ice chips or like, this person's blood pressure looks a little elevated and the machine keeps digging, and yet the nurse just keeps coming in and turning it off. Like, that doesn't seem right to me. But having that person there to advocate for you and help take care of you is critically important, whether that's your partner, your husband, your mother, a doula, or someone else. Absolutely.
And you know, it is so true, because I remember my mom was about to go get surgery on stomach issues that she had. And they were literally going, as soon as she got there, they're like, we're taking you straight into surgery. And of course she called me, and then I called my friend who was a doctor. And then he called the doctor, and the doctor didn't know anything about what was going on, but he was about to do the surgery. And, you know, my friend was just like, Dr. Obi, he was like, listen, what is it? Why are you doing it? What's the percentage? And he was like, because he asked the right questions, it postponed the surgery. She still needed to have it, but at least we know now, or knew at the time, that the doctor really knew what was going on, because in the beginning he didn't. And I think that's so, we just assume that these people know every single thing, but sometimes they don't, but we just assume. So it is important that we do have an advocate. I think that was great. What was the name of the bill again? Marquita is trying to Google it, but she's spelling it wrong.
The Momnibus bill, MOMNIBUS, again, sponsored by Congresswoman Lauren Underwood, Alma Adams from North Carolina, and Senator Cory Booker.
Okay.
It's like the word omnibus over the M. That's funny.
Exactly.
No, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Go ahead.
I want to jump in here as well, because I think it's important to talk about postpartum health as well. When Dr. Raegan is talking about, I had a doula for my first pregnancy, and then my husband became my doodla, and because he knew what I needed and when I wanted it, and he just figured out how to do it. And for my third child, he was my doodla as well, right? But for my third child, I decided to have a postpartum doula, right? Someone who also encapsulates your placenta. And because I did that with all of my children. And if you're interested in it, please feel free to contact me. But what I realized—
What is that?
Encapsulation of your placenta.
I'm a guy. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, so Dr. Raegan, maybe you could talk a little bit about the placenta. And I'll let Dr. Raegan, could you give me a medical term for the placenta?
I know what the placenta is. I don't know if that
amazing
like
thing.
what you're talking about. Yeah.
It's an organ that the body creates during pregnancy to support the pregnancy, and then comes out after the baby comes out.
But what did you do with it?
Yes, and so I had a doula who dehydrated it and encapsulated it for me. And I found, I mean, some people are for it, some people are against it, right? Again, these are options. I am not saying that this is the best path for everyone. What I'm saying is that it is a path. And so what I realized with the encapsulation of my placenta is that I was able to give it back to my child. So I don't have sickly children. So when I heard a cough or anything, I would take a little portion of the pill. I would open the pill and sprinkle it in yogurt, and I would give it to my child. And so it also helped regulate my hormones. I used that up until the expiration date, which is about 6 to 7 months. And I would take one just to get myself back in order, my body back together. And I also gave it to my kids. So that's what we're talking about. But and I'm happy to talk more about it. What I really wanted, look, what's going on over there?
I'm just thinking about you eating the placenta. That's
I'm not eating it.
In a capsule form.
I don't care if you put vomit in the capsule. I'm not eating it.
Well, you know what? I understand that. But it helped to regulate my mind. It was so good, and I would do it again if I had the opportunity. But
well, go ahead. I'll let you finish, and then Dr. Raegan, I wanted to get your thoughts on the same thing and see what your thoughts on that. But go ahead.
But also the idea of a postpartum doula, right? And someone to help you during the postpartum. If before I leave this, I have to say that sometimes as a Black, and I struggled with this, oftentimes we are so ready to get back to work. We're so anxious to get back. And in other cultures, they take 2 to 4 months to get their body back together. They don't touch a dish to wash. They don't touch any clothing. They don't cook. And so if I can offer something for Black women after birth, you deserve it. Sit down and heal and allow your mind and your body to work together. And sometimes also the awareness of postpartum depression, which we don't talk about often at all. And so I'm just saying that that your birthing plan is as important as your postpartum plan.
That's good. That's good. Dr. Raegan, your thoughts on the placenta eating?
Let me say this, that I'm just glad at sort of where we ended this conversation, right? Like the idea of spoiling Black mamas and birthing people, whether that's like helping them encapsulate their placentas or giving them foot massages or like having someone feed them elaborate meals, like that's the vision that I want to get to, right? Versus where we started in this conversation about Black women being 2 to 3 times more likely to die than white women. Like that's the world that we should all be envisioning, where we're spoiling Black mamas and Black birthing people and supporting them and having them thrive and not have to worry about losing their life from something as natural as having a baby. So I appreciate you highlighting this important conversation. And it's been such a joy to hear your story, actually, Nicole.
Thank you, Dr. Raegan.
No,
what does placenta taste like?
I know we're gonna go back to this. It's dehydrated, so it's just like a powder
jerky
form. No, it's not. You're not eating it like that. Although some people may. Mine was dehydrated, and it was kind of like if you've taken a vitamin and you've taken a pill off of the vitamin, it's kind of that consistency. So sometimes people will take a pill and put it in their blender. They will open up the pill and put the powder. It's that consistency. So so it's just like you're taking a pill or you're emptying out a pill. It's not raw or tough. It's in powder form.
So part of the reason why I thought it was so important, as we moved out of Black History Month, and I tend to do a little bit of research as a reminder of the things that we have all gone through. And I started doing research again, reading some old stuff that I had from school where, Black women who were slaves were breastfeeding the white children and taking care of the children. And then I was sharing with Janora and Abdul how, my grandmother was a maid, and one of the doctors, my mom's doctor, happened to be one of the kids that she helped raise. And I just feel like we need to have this discussion because I feel like how we just ended it, Ashley, Nicole, where we should be pampering ourselves after we have a kid. And when I say pampering, meaning like just
it's not pampering.
I'm not saying pampering, but just taking care of ourselves, loving on ourselves, self-care as we're loving on this kid, so that you don't have that tension of like, oh my God, am I going to be able to do this? And how am I going to handle? And go ahead.
And let's talk about our ancestors, right? They're called wet nurses, right? Mm-hmm. And so they would feed their enslavers' children, but they weren't allowed to feed, right. They weren't allowed to feed their own. Mm-hmm. Because the mother didn't want the mixture. The mother did not want their baby touching a mom's breast where a Black baby was fed. So let's go there. Like, so when we talk about this, like, it is indigenous to our culture. We were the nurses. We were the midwives. This was a profession. I talk a little bit about the statistics a little bit in my book, but I think that, again, Dr. Raegan, I am so happy you're here. And I think that there's a plethora of options for Black women to consider and Black fathers to consider. Mm-hmm. I just want it all out on the table. So, you know what? I'm not going to encapsulate my placenta. Oh, but you know what? I am going to ask about, I am going to say, call the nurse. I don't feel like I'm feeling safe here. Or I'm going to, learning terminology to enhance your experience.
Mm-hmm. Agree. And what's the name of your book? Is it Are you still writing? Is it out? Can we find it?
I am still working on it, but you can follow at Birthing Bear on Instagram, and you can kind of see about some of the statistics I put out about my life and those things, and you can catch it when I'm ready to release it.
Nice, beautiful. Raegan, do you have anything that you want to, Dr. Raegan, is there other things that you might want to say to leave out there for our audience who might be considering this, or maybe they have a relative that's, you know, getting ready to have a kid that they should be thinking about?
Yeah, thank you so much again to each of you for highlighting this important topic. And I know it's scary, but again, I think I want to put this in perspective that, you know, Black women having significant complications or dying from childbirth is still rare, and yet one is still too many. So educate yourself about your options, find your voice, advocate for yourself, and then make sure you have a trusted support person by your side every step of the way. And don't be afraid to pamper yourself. We all deserve it.
I love it. I love it. Janora, Abdul, anything that you want to add?
I just want to now ask Dr. Raegan where folks can follow up and find her if they have any questions or future comments.
Thank you, Janora. You can find me at Dr. Raegan on Twitter. And you can find me at Power to Decide, where I'm the new CEO. Super excited, doing great work in the sexual reproductive health field. And I hope to continue the conversation. I hope you'll have me back again.
Love it. Absolutely. Because you are a wealth of knowledge, both of you guys. This was such an enlightening conversation. I think it's very important. A lot of my friends are having kids now. A lot of us are older, late 30s, early 40s. And so all this information, I think, is it's just fascinating to hear. So thank you. Thank you both. So with that being said, we are going to get to our BPS of the week. Dr. Raegan, you are familiar, but Ashley Nicole, we love to honor somebody in the community who is doing something that is uplifting the community. So we always try to pick somebody that people don't know about, Black businesses, Black artists, that type of thing. So our BPS person of the week is a father who took the phrase diaper duty to a whole new level. So we're playing on this whole birthing mother situation. But Virginia Beach resident Kwame White left corporate America and started his own company making diaper bags for dads. He started the WSEL Bags Company, which stands for Work Smart, Enjoy Life, for stay-at-home dads that simply wanted to get a nice diaper bag to use. After tons of online searches, talking to a lot of other new fathers, and realizing that there are thousands of diaper bags for mothers and very few products for fathers, he decided to do something about it. Leveraging his 12 years of supply chain experience at one of the largest retailers in the USA, 10 years of customer service experience in event planning, and 1.5 years of being a dad, he created Work Smart, Enjoy Life bags to offer trendy, high-quality, multifunctional diaper bags for dads and moms. And just so you guys know, each bag comes with a charging port, 13 to 19 pockets, a padded laptop pocket that can easily fit the 12-inch laptop, an insulated bottle pocket. So he created something amazing. So for trying to make men a more hipper and stylish jag, Mr. White, you are our BPS person of the week. And that is it. I am Christy Ferris. That was This Week in Black People Shit this week. Shout out to all of the people who are out here watching. We appreciate you every single week. Please like and share. And I think that's it, unless anybody else has something to say.
I just have one quick shout out. We had a couple new viewers today, and Absolutely. They are part of our Hello Sisters crew, which actually includes Dr. Raegan and myself. So Shout out to Candy, Suzanne, and Tori, who tuned in to support today. And yep, full disclosure, Dr. Raegan is a dear friend from University of North Carolina. We were actually college roommates freshman and sophomore year. And Ashley Nicole is one of my dearest friends in Los Angeles. So I am just so blessed to be surrounded by such Black girl magic. You both make me better people. And it's just an honor to know you. And thank you both for extending your time and your knowledge today to all of our BPS listeners.
Yay. And I just want y'all to know that Janora's got me on that Peloton over here working out. I did it today. So Black women supporting Black women. I love it. All right, you guys, we will see you next week. Thank you for joining us, and have a great